figure at the top, which is figure 3-27. These are the tables you need. And they actually have the fields showing that you need to create, and they give you a lot of information. This is going to be very helpful for you to, and it's actually part of a database diagram that you would need if you were working with database. One of the things I'm going to also talk about is the database diagram and database dictionary, and I'm going to show you in Access how you can find that. And it's very helpful when you first go to work with a new database or database management system. It's also very important when you have a large database management system or database, and so I will also show you how to work with those. Okay, so there are 7 tables. They are seminar, customer, seminar underscore customer, contact, invoice, product, and line underscore item. And you can see in that figure 3-27 the fields that are required. You can also turn the page and look at figure 3-28, which includes the SQL statements, and these will give you the criteria you need to set up the fields for that database. And that's what I want you to focus on and be able to understand it. So you can see that also on this Word document, and I want to talk about that and show you in the database how you create the fields based on this information. Okay, let's get started with the customer table, which is the first one that they have on the list, and let's right click on that and choose the design view for the customer table. And you see I already have this one created, and there's some information in here, and let's basically just run through some of this criteria so we can see what we're talking about. So you have a unique field, which is the customer ID, and no duplicates are allowed. Therefore, we can index that, and so that's going to be the primary key for the customer table. There is a last name and a first name, and you notice the field size down at the bottom is 25, and if you look at the characters listed in SQL, it requires that it be 25. It also requires that it be not null. So therefore, this field must contain information. So in Access, to assure that this happens, you're going to come down to under General, and where it says Required, you're going to use the drop down to change No to Yes. So it's going to be a required that data will have to be in that field. Okay, so that's also true for first name. Its field size is 25. Then we're going to come down to the email address, and of course you can see the data type, and the field size on the email address is 100. It is also required, and it also says that one of the constraints is that the email address must be unique. So how do you make sure that it's unique? Well, you'll come down to the bottom where it says, of course we've selected required, so that's yes. You come down to where it says index, and you're going to choose from the drop down, you're going to choose yes, no duplicates. So you will not have any duplicate information in the email address. That will assure you that the customer's email address is unique, and you can use that also to index the field, index that table. Okay, and let's go on down the list. Okay, you have an encrypted password, and you have a, so let me check that. That looks wrong. So let me check the encrypted password. Okay, and that should be 50 characters. So let me change that from 255 to 50. Okay, so let me hit save on that. Okay, and then we come down to phone, and so the field size on the phone is 12. And then we come to the street address. The street address field size is 35. And I'm just looking to see if it specifies that. It also specifies that the default value needs to be Dallas. So in the street address, oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. In the city, okay, the default value needs to be Dallas. And just when you key in a default value in Microsoft Access, it's going to be a little bit different than with Server, SQL Server. You're going to have to use quote marks versus single quote. Okay, so you'll type that in, and then you also have a default value for the state. And as I said, you get a primary key, which is customer ID, and you're also going to have okay, so notice that a number of these fields are required, and so you want to make sure that required is listed here. As in the SQL, it's going to say not null. So when you see not null in SQL, you need to make sure that you specify that data in that field is required. Now, let's go back to relationships, and that's under database tools and relationships. Okay, so we have lots of relationships in here created, and so you'll see the relationships specified under constraint in SQL. So for example, let's take a look at the constraints for the table we just looked at, the seminar customer. So we've got a one-to-many relationship with seminar, and seminar listed in the seminar customer table. We also have a one-to-many relationship between customer and seminar customer. So let's right click on that and choose edit the relationship. So what they're saying is that they want us to create a referential integrity, so we've done that, but they want no action taken when we update, so we don't want to cascade update related fields, and it says no action taken on deleted. So you can actually prompt to delete fields in an associated table and update fields in an associated table based on this information, but we're going to have that turned off for this relationship, so we're going to say OK. Okay, and the same is, I think, let me just check this one. Okay, so that was same is true here. Okay, so you want to make sure both of those have been turned off, but that you do have enforced referential integrity selected. Okay. Okay, I want to touch base on the invoice table. Okay, so in the invoice table, let's take and look at how we create information in there. So this has a primary key, which is invoice number. It has invoice date, which is a date, time, data type, and we have customer ID, which is a relationship that's going to be created with the customer table. And then you have payment type, which is short text, and payment type I think is not correct for that, so let me double check that. Invoice, okay, payment type needs to be 25 characters, so that needs to be 25, and we need to choose save. Alright, and we want to make sure that we enter information, so we can have a lookup field, and the lookup field can be created, and you can see that that's under constraints. You can create a lookup field, and you'll want to choose combo box and value list, and then you want to put quote marks around each one of the items on the list, and you want to put a semicolon between each one of the items. So let me just do the last two so you can see what we're working with. So we've use a semicolon, and so the last and we want to type in after PayPal, we're going to type in check. I didn't put the quote. Put a quote mark, check, and then a closing quote, and then a semicolon, and then an opening quote mark, and then we want to use type in cash, and then a closing quote. For the last item on the list, you would not put a semicolon behind it. You would just leave it with quotes around the last item. Okay, and so that's how you set up an item like with a list pull down. And the reason you do that is to provide the users with a list of items that they can pull from. This is very helpful when you are trying to make sure that users are not creating their own information and you have multiple words that mean the same thing, and you want to make sure that this helps you also error proof what they're keying in, and it also makes it easier for them. Okay, so you're going to have information in here for each one of these items to help you specify, for example, the size. Okay, field type for subtotal needs to be number, so we're going to make it number. We're going to make this one be, in this case, single. We're going to specify that it be so 9-2. It means that you want 9 characters before the decimal point and 2 after. So the decimal point will be 2, and under format you can type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, a period, and then 2 more, and for your format. And we're going to take out the 0 for the default value. We don't want to have that in there. And for the invoice, for the subtotal, I'm going to do the same thing for shipping, tax, and total. So we're going to make that be a number. Come down and change that to single. We're going to come to the tax, make that be number, and make that be single, and the total is going to be number, and it's going to be single. And then for shipping, it's going to be 2 decimal places after the, and then we're going to go and we're going to get rid of the default value on that, and we're going to come to the next item. It's going to be single format. Let's do the decimal places to 2, and we're going to go and get rid of the 0, and then we'll go to the next one, and that's going to be 2, and get rid of that, and we're going to save that. Okay, we're going to resume and save. Okay, so that's invoice. Okay, and then let's close this, and yes, and then we're going to use design and check out what we have in here. So we have we want to do the same thing as far as setting those up, making sure we're looking into how we formatted them correctly. So for example, in line item, it's not going to be single. If you look at line item, it's going to require that quantity be integer. So int stands for integer. But that's because you're not going to have any parts. You're going to have whole numbers to represent the quantity that you'd have in stock. You wouldn't have 24.5 parts. You would have 24, or you would have 25. So that's correct for that. Okay, the last thing you're going to do is go over and check your relationships to make sure they are working and set up correctly according to the constraints outlined for those tables.